I welcome you all in the next video tutorial of the biosynthetic pathway series. So in this video we are going to see an important biosynthetic pathway, that is the amino acid. So far we have covered the shikimic acid pathway, yes, the mevalonic acid pathway. Now let's see the amino acid pathway, how the amino acids are produced, and we know there are diverse classification of the amino acid. So they are produced by different type of complex reactions. So the amino acid synthesis is a set of the biochemical pathways by which amino acids are produced. So first of all, let's see from intermediate of the citric acid cycle, these amino acids are produced. So if you will focus upon this part, that is the citric acid cycle, you will see here clearly there are different type of amino acid as produced that involve this cycle, that is the citric acid cycle, that is aspartate, asparagine, methionine, lysine and threonine via oxaloacetate. And when you see in this citric acid cycle, there is another intermediate, that is the alpha ketoglutarate is produced, and from this different type of amino acids like glutamine, proline and arginine are biosynthesized. And if you see this image as a whole, you will observe that there are the three major pathway or the cycle involved in the production of the amino acids. Number one is indicated by this yellow color, that is the PPP pathway, that is the pentose phosphate pathway. Second one is indicated by this blue color, that is the glycolysis. And third one is indicated by the citric acid cycle, that is in the green color. So if we talk about the suppose glycolysis, so just see here in the glycolysis there is an intermediate, that is the 3-phosphoglycerate is produced, from which this amino acid serine is biosynthesized. In the same way, if you see the pentose phosphate pathway, here it is. So from erythrose 4-phosphate, phenylalanine, tyrosine and tryptophan, we have already covered this point in the, yes, you are right, these are the aromatic amino acids biosynthesized by shikimic acid pathway, and we have completed this point also, means erythrose 4-phosphate is involved in the shikimic acid pathway. Okay, and of course the alanine, valine, leucine and isoleucines are also synthesized by using glycolysis process. So this whole image give you a brief idea, and you have to draw this. Okay, you have to draw this also in the examination if the questions ask about the amino acid pathway. So this will give a brief idea how the pentose phosphate pathway, glycolysis and the Krebs cycle, that is the citric acid cycle, is involved in the generation of these amino acids. Suppose if you talk about this, that that is glucose 6-phosphate, suppose. So it is a 4-step reaction from which 3-phosphoglycerate is produced, and again is a multi-step reaction from which phosphoenol pyruvate is produced, and finally pyruvate is produced in the glycolysis, and from which alanine, valine, isoleucine and leucine is synthesized. And there is a rearrangement reaction between this 3-phosphoglycerate and erythrose 4-phosphate, and from this phenylalanine, tyrosine and tryptophan are synthesized. Now if you look at this cycle, that is the citric acid cycle, we have completed this point, that is it is citric acid cycle. From this cycle, oxaloacetate and alpha ketoglutarate, these are the key intermediate involved in this cycle, and from these intermediate, that is the oxaloacetate and alpha ketoglutarate, different type of amino acids are synthesized. So let's take an example for the better understanding. Suppose if we have to synthesize this leucine. So we know leucine, in this leucine, which is the main important cycle is involved, yes, glycolysis is involved. And when you read the synthesis of the leucine, you can found there are different type of steps are involved, but you have to focus only upon the major one. Okay, just read this line. The leucine synthesis pathway, it diverges from the valine pathway beginning with the alpha keto isovalerate, and basically we know that acetyl coenzyme is produced. In this way the different derivatives have been synthesized. So means this arrow means pyruvate to this alanine, valine, this involves number of sub steps or sub points which resulted in the formation of ultimately these amino acids. So you don't, in this particularly for this particular topic, you don't have to remember all the steps involved in all the amino acid, but at least you will focus upon at least one or two. First of all, you have to draw this cycle because this is a generation of the amino acid pathway involving pentose phosphate pathway, glycolysis, and of course that is the citric acid cycle, that is the Krebs cycle. Or you can also do this question in this way. First of all, you will draw this glycolysis, and we know from the glycolysis, from the glucose 6-phosphate, ribose 5-phosphate is produced, and then histidine, this is the amino acid is produced. And this is a 4-step reaction from which the phosphoglycerate is produced, and then again tryptophan, phenylalanine are synthesized from erythrose 4-phosphate. Okay, and from over here, this is again converted by various steps into phosphenol pyruvate. Ultimately pyruvate is produced, and then alanine, valine, leucine and isoleucine are synthesized. Or then yes, you will follow the citric acid cycle also. We know from oxaloacetate, asparaginine, methionine, threonine and lysine is produced, and from alpha ketoglutarate, glutamine, proline and arginine are synthesized. So if we talk about the alpha ketoglutarate family, we know glutamine, proline and arginine are the main key amino acid produced or synthesized. So as we have covered this shikimic acid pathway already, and we know this pathway is involved in the production of tryptophan, phenylalanine and tyrosine. So in this way we will focus upon the production of these 3 amino acids. So suppose let's talk about the tryptophan. We know phosphenol pyruvic acid and erythrose 4-phosphate, so they are came from different glycolysis and the pentose phosphate pathway, and we know that erythrose 4-phosphate are produced from pentose phosphate pathway, whereas the phosphenol pyruvic acid is obtained via glycolysis. And from this there are different type of reactions are going on. Please watch the previous video because we have already covered this. And finally shikimic acid produced, and from this shikimic acid, corysmic acid or anthranylic acid with the help of anthranilate synthetase, and finally tryptophan is produced. And what you have to do while attempting this question, you have to add some of the intermediate step in between them, and that will complete your this topic of the amino acid. So if we talk about the synthesis of the tryptophan, what happened here, because we have covered this point, from shikimic acid this corysmic acid is produced, then ultimately corysmate is involved in the generation of this tryptophan. So just you will recall, at least add the at least 2 steps in between, and rest will be the your shikimic acid pathway will be followed. So here it is, from suppose from corysmate with the help of this anthranilate synthetase, anthranilate is produced. Okay, and this anthranilate, from this again an intermediate compound is produced with the help of anthranilate phosphoribosal transferase. Okay, and ultimately with the involvement of this enol derivative, okay, then tryptophan synthetase is involved in the production of this tryptophan. So at least try to add one of the 2 reaction in this your shikimic acid pathway over here, and that will complete your topic of the amino acid pathway ultimately. Okay, so I hope this is clear. You have to follow, first of all you have to draw this in the examination. This is very simple because amino acids are produced, they are involved with different type of cycles like pentose phosphate, glycolysis and the CTA cycle, that is the Krebs cycle. Okay, and if you talk about suppose over here pentose phosphate pathway, and we know in the pentose phosphate pathway from glucose 6-phosphate is produced, and with the 4-step reaction ribose 5-phosphate is produced, which then resulted into production of histidine, which is an amino acid. Then serine is also produced. And if you talk about the glycolysis, yes, over here with the help of this pyruvate, it is involved in the generation of alanine, valine, isoleucine and leucine. So if you talk about citric acid cycle, yes, these type of amino acid like proline, arginine, aspartame, you can say threonine or lysine are produced. So I hope this will give you a brief idea about the amino acid pathway. In the last, I acknowledge all the resources I have used. Thank you for your time.